From the Ticats Audio Network, this is the Ticats This Week with RJ Broadhead and Luke Tasker.
The Tiger Cats started 0-3. Since then, they've gone 3-1. Yes, they've won 3 of their last 4 games, and they have a chance to get back to 500 for the first time this season on Saturday against Montreal at Tim Hortons Field at 7 o'clock. Welcome to Ticats This Week. I'm RJ Broadhead along with Luke Tasker. Pretty exciting to see how the Tiger Cats have turned things around, isn't it, Luke?
It is, and still a lot of work to do. You know, the games, you think about each of those games, Edmonton being the exception, but those 2 Ottawa wins, boy, they were both right down to the wire. Very, very interesting wins. A lot of great defensive play, but Ottawa was able to move the ball a little bit in both those games to make it very, very interesting. But this would be a really, really great win going with Montreal here. That was a game that I think back to RJ in their first meeting where, you know, maybe the Ticats' worst game of the first half of that season. I mean, they really they had a lot to work on, and Montreal looked great. So this would be a good win here against another East team.
Yeah, 38-12 was the score of that game, and if you look back, the Ticats were leading the game 6-0. So Montreal really, after a slow start, it was that Chandler-worthy punt return touchdown that really seemed to change the momentum, and I felt like that Montreal game, Luke, was the first time that we really kind of looked at each other, calling the game in the commercial break, and felt that Ticats should have had touchdowns, not field goals, and maybe the game would have been different. And having that, because a couple of good drives to get the field goals, but if those were touchdowns, that would have changed the whole game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was we've seen it since then too. That comes back to bite them, and you saw it in the Toronto game as well, where not like they couldn't get any offensive production going, right? I mean, they were driving the ball, they were getting some first downs, but for one reason or another, and there was, really one reason or another, it was either penalties or it was a turnover or it was mistakes, there's drops, they ending their drives short of the end zone. And certainly against Toronto, right now, that's not going to be able to win a game. You've got to put the ball in the end zone. We saw the same struggle, like you said, against Montreal at Tim Hortons Field, and I think that the Ticats offense has been on a good trajectory. I think you see last week in Ottawa, you see the passing game start to be more consistent, starting to get more yards per completion. I mean, they're pushing the ball down the field a little bit, but the glaring issue, obviously, is that from that last Ottawa game was the turnovers, and overcoming that, there was a 5-3 turnover differential in that Ottawa game, and overcoming that for the win is huge. I'm just not sure you're going to be able to do that very many times. And I think Montreal is a team that's going to be able to move the ball down the field maybe a little bit more efficiently than Ottawa did, and those turnovers have got to be eliminated.
In that first game against Montreal, turnovers, Ticats had 5, and they had no takeaways. Montreal did not turn the ball over, so that's a big reason why it was 38-12. You were a receiver, Luke, and that last Montreal game, Matt Schultz was the starter. But if you go through these last 4 games for the Tiger Cats, Schultz had a start. Taylor Powell had his first start against Toronto. Then Bo Levi-Mitchell came back against Ottawa, threw for 353 yards, which is good, but now Bo's out, so it's back to Taylor Powell getting his second start. That's 4 different starting quarterbacks in 4 straight weeks. Does it matter to a receiver when there's that inconsistency at quarterback?
Yeah, it's ideally you don't have that. Now it all comes down to the guys who are being interchanged there. But it certainly does, and the crazy thing is, RJ, like the Ticats are now notorious for quarterback changes, right? Since the Ticats Audio Network has been in existence, that's all you and I have seen.
It's true,
isn't that nuts? I mean, for what is it, whatever, 3 seasons in a row, and even before that, 2019, Jeremiah Mazzoli gets hurt halfway through the season. So it's been an unfortunate reality for the Ticats that they've constantly had to face. And for a wide receiver and for anybody on the offensive line as well, it's certainly something that makes your job a little bit unsettled. You've got to continue to adjust and continue to play with a new guy calling the plays. I mean, it comes down to even like the basic things. Like you'd be shocked the cadence, like the snap count, like and the constantly having somebody else doing it. It's not easy actually, and the quarterbacks are trying to mimic each other for the timing of the waggle motion and trying to make that cadence very similar to each other. But it's not always. It's hard to do that, and so even the littlest thing like that. It causes some, another little wrinkle that you have to get just right with your offense. And so, Taylor Powell, though, now this is his second, though not consecutive, but it is his second start. And I think you and I, RJ, agreed that there were some things that we really liked about Taylor Powell in his first start, and some throws that he made that I thought were great. And same story, you got to eliminate those turnovers. But I think he's an exciting guy to watch.
Yeah, look back, his first pass in the CFL was a touchdown to Tim White. Then that game against Toronto, he ran a touchdown in, so he's got a couple of those under his belt. And we thought Toronto's defense was one of the best in the league. Montreal is unbelievable. They played 6 games. They've allowed 3 touchdowns in 6 games, which is, it's one of those stats that you have to look at a few times to think, I must have read this wrong. And no, they have been unbelievable on defense. Now, they'll be without linebackers Avery Williams and Najee Murray and defensive back Deontay Ruffin. And Keon Julian Grant won't play at receiver, and he's a major threat for them. But on defense, this is a big challenge for Taylor Powell. Plus, you throw in the fact the running game has gone on hiatus for the last couple of games. They only had 38 yards rushing against Montreal, and that seemed poor until last game when they had 24 yards rushing. So they'll have to establish the run game to help Taylor Powell, and he'll have to be very sharp against this Montreal team that doesn't allow much. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting part of this year's story for the Ticats is sort of the inconsistency of the running game, and that doesn't mean just always bad running game. I mean, really, there's a disparity there for some reason, and you got James Butler, who's 2 games in a row, he really had a lot of production there. The team had over 100-yard rushing, and then of course you come back with the stats you just mentioned, and you've had some consecutive games, some nights with some really lacking in productive run. RJ, I wish I had a better answer for why that is. I mean, honestly, I legitimately wish I understood it. I don't.
Yeah.
It's like you kind of don't know which one you're going to get when you go into a game. And of course, it comes down to how the opponents are, how well they're able to stop those run plays. And of course, the effort or the play call that's put towards the run game. So we'll see. But all I know from playing experience is that when the running game is working, when it's going, it is not just an ends to itself. I mean, it helps every other facet of the offense. So I would love to see James Butler control some more of the time and some more of the yardage in this back and forth.
Yeah, it's he still was a performer of the month for July. James Butler was so, and he's a competitive guy. I've talked to him many times, so he's going to be fired up to get in there and make something happen. The other interesting thing in that last game against Ottawa, Hamilton had 19 first downs. They were all passing, no rushing first downs. And if you think back, they did have a lot of second and longs and were pretty good, especially early on, converting those second and longs. But 19 first downs, and every single one of them were passing. Do you remember a game like that very often? You didn't have a short yardage for a yard or something to get a first down?
Exactly, and then what an interesting game stat to see after. I mean, every CFL game you'd think there's at least two short yardage aside, right? But early in that game, there was the Ticats were like shockingly efficient on second down. I mean, really just converting no matter what the down and distance was, and that's what we mentioned earlier. Like the offense for the Ticats has made big strides in their play call, and Bo Levi Mitchell, of course, was moving the ball very well in those early plays. It's almost amazing. You almost want to say you can't outplay turning the ball over 5 times, but they did. They actually outplayed a 5 interception game, or overcame that, I should say, which is just amazing. I mean, that's you could just think back to what that game might have looked like with just half those turnovers, or just less. And so you almost want to say it's an easy correction to make. Of course, like we've been talking about, the quarterback changeup, each of those guys has to make those right decisions and right reads. But the offense seems to me like it's on the verge, like it's ready to have a really, really big game without the mistakes, without the turnovers, and you can sense seems like they're ready to have a productive 30-point game.
Yeah, and the defense in that Ottawa game, we haven't even talked about the defense. Unbelievable. Mark Washington, he had a terrific plan for Dustin Crum. I remember one of his first runs, and Jameer Thurman almost like he perked up, like he was spying Crum. But you need the right personnel for that, and Jameer Thurman is a big, strong guy who is fast. So he's the perfect guy at middle linebacker, and he really shut down Crum, especially early on. And 158 yards passing is all Ottawa had. But that defense was a huge key in that victory against Ottawa. And again, they'll have to be getting after Cody Fajardo and the Alouettes. What did you think of that defensive performance?
Yeah, pretty dominant. I think at halftime, Ottawa's net offense was 67 yards or something like that. You and I were talking about in the booth. I mean, the really unbelievable ability to stop that engine that for all of July, really, the Ottawa offense was surprisingly, they lost Jeremiah Mazzoli, and they were able to sort of still put some production together, won some very interesting games. But that Ticat defense looked really, really sharp that night. And of course, then the last drive of the game got very interesting there, which is we were calling that last drive as Ottawa started to be able to move the ball down the field, actually in very large chunks, and it was looking very, very similar to what we had seen at Tim Hortons Field a few weeks earlier, where Ottawa at the end of the game was driving down, and all of a sudden kind of finding some steam with their offense. The one thing, RJ, about the Ticat defense, it was a three turnovers for Ottawa in total, but there was a turnover on downs at the end of the game, and there was that crazy double turnover play, which I love. I love seeing it. I love watching it, and we talked about it to great extent. But the only one true takeaway from the defense in that game, one interception. And that's against, of course, the 5 that the Ticats offense gave away. So I would love to see this defense be able to ball hawk a little bit more and force a few more errant throws or fumbles from this Montreal offense, and sort of try to balance that scale of what's been sort of a lopsided turnover ratio.
Yeah, Ottawa made it close there at the end with, they could have had a first down, I think, on the Hamilton 2, but they were going for the end zone anyway. The defense held. There is one concerning thing for the defense, Luke, that is really uncharacteristic for a Tiger Cats defense. The rushing yards. In 6 of 7 games, the Tiger Cats have allowed 100 or more rushing yards against. That's just one game. They've held them under 100 yards, in Montreal, we know, has a terrific running game. So if there is something that needs to improve, it's that, isn't it?
Yep, I would lump that in, like we said, with the lack of takeaways. Those two things together. It's interesting. I mean, in years past, you're right, RJ. The Ticats have been very, very strong against the run. Even, in fact, it was almost like the thing they did best. Maybe at times when other things were struggling or lacking, they were strong still against the run. It's give and take. I mean, I think that the Ticats, to me, have not been a really easy team to pass on. Not to say that they've been dominant there. The Ticat defense has been at the bottom end of a lot of the defensive statistics throughout the year. But it's give and take. You've got, it's like you got 12 guys, and you got to spread them out one way or another. And everybody who you load into the box, that's one less that is in the secondary there. So, defense almost more so maybe than offense. I mean, it's like the win is what matters, and getting it done is what matters. It's like statistically, the Ottawa put up a lot of yards on that last drive of the game, but when it comes right down to it, Casey Sales made the play to bat the ball down, and we saw Stavros Katsantonis coming in and making the plays, and so it's sort of an attitude thing with defense. In the Coach O show this week, Coach said, it's at the end of that Ottawa game, it was a not my guy mentality for the Ticat defense. It's like a mantra that they have, like, it's not going to be my guy who scores this touchdown, not going to be my guy who makes the play to win. And they do seem like a defense who are coming to, even though those statistics have been lacking, it has not been a perfect season. And you talked about they've let up a lot of yards in the run game, but they seem to me like a defensive unit that is kind of winning in that side right now. They are coming together and sort of solidifying and just making it count at the end when they have to.
Yeah, the Coach O Show with Luke Tasker. You can catch it Tuesdays on the Ticats Audio Network, and it releases on Tuesday. You can listen to it anytime you want. I'm glad you explained that, Luke, because when you said not my guy, it initially was like, oh, he made the play, but it wasn't my guy. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah, no, different usage of that term. Pre-snap, not my guy.
Yes.
It's not going to be my guy is how they say it. But yeah, that's a Mark Washington and Orlando Steinauer, defensive energy, saying, yeah, just, not going to be my guy. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Mark Washington did a great job defensively with that game plan against Ottawa. We'll see what he's got up his sleeve against Montreal. Montreal's really involved in bye weeks for Hamilton. So going into the first bye week, Ticats played Montreal. That was not a good game. This time they play Montreal. They'll have a bye week next week. And then they don't have another bye until after Game 17 of the season. So just before playoffs, maybe that's a good time for a bye. We'll see how it all pans out in the rest of the season. But their last game of the season will be against Montreal.
Well, they're talking about an East Division crossover into the West Division which never been done. Oh my goodness! So who knows what Week 17 will hold, or that bye week we'll be doing? But there's all sorts of crazy scenarios that are still at play with two teams struggling in the West, which is sort of unusual for the CFL.
Yeah, well, think back to last year, that West crossover, everybody was talking about it until, I don't know, last 5 or 6 games of the season. So there's a lot of season to go. But that win against Ottawa was huge for the Tiger Cats because the East Division is so tight, but now they've won the season series against the Red Blacks. Montreal, they play 3 times. They lost big in the first game. They need to win this game because you want to stay in the East Division. You want to have a home playoff game. You do a crossover. You're not going to be playing at home, and you're going to have a lot of travel. So the home playoff game is huge, which adds more importance to this game against Montreal. They can't lose the first 2 against the Alouettes, or Montreal has that season series against the Ticats, and that could turn out to be a factor late in the season.
Yeah, that's right. You got if a team wins that series, you have to beat them in record outright, right? So you have no form of a tiebreaker anymore. And yeah, when it comes to Montreal and Cody Fajardo and what they've been able to do, since that Ticat game, it was interesting to watch them go on a losing streak for a while, because they played pretty well against the Ticats at Tim Hortons Field, and to see. Like I said, that was sort of, I think you and I in the booth, it was sort of that was a low point of that early season, the way the Ticats played that game. And then Montreal went on that losing streak. Getting that win back for them last week, I'm just going to be very interested to see what kind of Montreal team comes out to play against the Ticats here. Generally speaking, from my experience in that situation, you get energy and you have some confidence going into a team that you played very well against earlier in that season. And so I think we're going to have a very fiery first quarter. And I think the Ticat defense and will have their kind of work cut out for them to stop some early energy from Montreal.
Watching the game against Winnipeg and BC, after BC had beat Winnipeg earlier in the season, and then the Lions go to Winnipeg on Thursday, you just got the feeling from Winnipeg that they weren't going to lose. They were going to play their best game, and they were awesome. I'd like to see that from the Tiger Cats, wouldn't you? Because Montreal came into Tim Hortons Field, and I talked to Chris Edwards about it. They were laughing. They were laughing at the Ticats, and that's got to motivate a team going into a second meeting, especially at home. The more you research it and look ahead, this is a huge game for the Tiger Cats. They really have to somehow get a victory, and they've got Taylor Powell at quarterback, his second start, which maybe he'll be more comfortable. He said he's the same as he was. He's a pretty even-keeled guy. Yeah. But how are you feeling about this game going in? What are your thoughts, and how important do you think it is for the Tiger Cats? I know it's still early, and we're not talking must-wins here, but it could play a factor as the season goes on.
No, 100%. It's East versus East, and these two teams, somebody in the East has to establish themselves, in the running down of Toronto, who is light years ahead. It feels like, right? And of course, things can happen, whatever injuries, adversity of other kind, things can happen. But this is one of these bottom three teams in the East has got to get their head above the water and become a winning football team. And Hamilton or Montreal kind of seems like they could, or like are about to be, right? And so only one is gonna win this weekend. Taylor Powell, there are some years where when a third string quarterback or somebody who you expected to be the third string quarterback is playing, it's like you don't have a great feeling about that, or there's a sawed-off offensive game plan. It's really minimal, and there's a little bit maybe some of that still for a young guy who is new to the league. But I just go back to I was impressed by him. I was impressed by the way he played. Impressed by some of the throws he made downfield. Like you said, that was running one in for a touchdown as well. And I'm encouraged by Taylor Powell as opposed to being, the classic young third string quarterback, kind of worried or deer in the headlights. Doesn't seem that way to me. I'm excited to watch him play.
Yeah, and I couldn't help but think watching Dane Evans against Winnipeg. Boy, it'd be nice to have Dane Evans right now, but of course that's not the way it worked out. But Taylor Powell has a bit of Dane Evans in him on the good. He's got a good arm. He can move. He's mobile. He's a competitor. A lot of the characteristics that made Dane Evans a good quarterback, I see in Taylor Powell. Do you see that too?
Yeah. I actually, it's funny you bring up that game, the BC Winnipeg game, because I was saying this at CFL this week. We had a Taylor Powell discussion there, and the thing that I like about him is something that I would say is very Zach Collaros-esque, actually, which is the ability to move around out of the pocket while seeing the field still. And he, I remember watching him in his previous start, roll out a little bit, but then kind of make a downfield throw that kind of made me say, wow, that's a really very athletic but very headsy quarterback play there. So yeah, I see promise. I see promise there. I see a real ability to make plays and potentially win games for this team.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Kyle Loxley involved a little more too.
Interesting, maybe. Yeah, after what it did last week in Ottawa, it was very, very unusual involvement, I would say. Kind of quiet, and maybe I would say a net negative for a long time before a big positive on a very long touchdown, and that was exciting too. So, yeah, maybe we see a couple different guys throw the football.
Well, it's going to be a big game against Montreal. Tiger Cats need to win it to still have a chance to win the season series against Montreal, and both teams are at 3 wins, as is Ottawa in the East Division. So a lot on the line as the Tiger Cats go into a bye week next week. So they'll leave it all on the line at Tim Hortons Field. 7 o'clock is the game. Hopefully you can be at Tim Hortons Field and be nice and loud and cheer the Tiger Cats on. Of course, the Ticats Audio Network will have the game. Bubba and Andy will have the pregame show at 6 o'clock, and Luke and I will have the call at 7 o'clock. Looking forward to seeing you there and calling this one with you, Luke.
Awesome, RJ. Looking forward to it. See you there.
It's been another busy week for your Hamilton Tiger Cats. Luke Tasker and RJ Broadhead have covered it all, and now we would like to hear from you. Email us anytime at gameday@ticats.ca. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.